Only because I'm naturally high as it is. I'll go crazy. I'll be
Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the afternoon session of the San Bernardino County Board of Supervisors. I want to wish everybody happy holidays and a Merry Christmas. So we're going to get started with the afternoon session. CEO Espinosa.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yes, this is going to be a public hearing held by our assessor, Tom Slavich, and he's going to be having the public hearing on the review of Land Conservation Act request for compatible use and division, Pebble Ridge Vineyards and Wine Estates, and many more. So we'll go ahead and have Tom discuss these items. Thanks, Tom.
Okay. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair, members of the board. The first item you have on your agenda is a lot line adjustment. It consists of three owners in the Williamson Act. The first owner is Pebble Ridge Vineyards, and they have 9 assessor parcels in Book 26 down in South County, 634 acres under contract number 73-1. The next owner is Doodlebug Ranches. There are 56 assessor parcels in Book 23 and Book 26, and that's consisting of a cattle ranch, 7,291 acres in size, under contract number 01-03. The third owner is Madeiras Ranch. That's assessors parcels 261301 and 261302. It's consisting of roughly 1,112 acres under contract number 6819. Now, all these ranches are located about 12 miles southeast of Hollister in the Piscinas area. And all three Williamson Act owners filed applications to adjust their 3 agricultural preserve contracts. Pebble Ridge Vineyards will exchange evenly 11.51 acres with Doodlebug Ranches on a 1-to-1 basis. Both Pebble Ridge Vineyards and Doodlebug Ranches will have the same acreage after the lot line adjustment, an even exchange. Pebble Ridge Vineyards will also purchase a little over 71 acres from Madeiras Ranch to plant vineyards. Pebble Ridge Vineyards will increase in acreage from 634 acres to 705, while Madeiras Ranch will decrease in size from 1112 to 1,041. The application has been submitted for the following reasons. The adjustments between Doodlebug Ranches and Pebble Ridge is basically due to a inconsistent legal description on their vesting deeds. The proposed resolution will not change either owner's total acreage in the Williamson Act. The adjustment involving Madeiras Ranch and Pebble Ridge, as mentioned prior, is to purchase 71 acres for additional planting of vineyards. Now, per our county ordinance 19-01021B3 and D1 and our California Government Code Section 51257 pertaining to lot line adjustments, there are 7 conditions that need to be met during a lot line adjustment. And I'll go over these briefly. The first is the new contract would enforceably restrict the adjusted boundaries of the parcel for initial term for at least as long as the unexpired term of the rescinded contract, but not more than 10 years. There is no net increase in the amount of acres restricted, number 2. And number 3, at least 90% of the land under the former contract remains under the new contract. Number 4, after the lot line adjustment, the parcels of land subject to contract will be large enough to sustain their ag use. 5, the lot line adjustment will not compromise the long-term agricultural productivity of the parcel or other ag lands. Number 6, the lot line adjustment is not likely to result in the removal of any adjacent lands from agricultural use. And 7, the lot line adjustment does not result in a greater number of developable parcels than existed prior to the adjustment. All 3 applicants meet all 7 conditions for approval. The Agricultural Preserve Advisory Committee recommended unanimous approval for these lot line adjustments. And if you have any questions of me.
Okay. Any questions by the board? No questions. Any questions or comments from the public? Seeing none, I'll bring it back to the board for an action.
Move to approve per staff recommendation.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none. Next one.
Okay, the next one is another lot line adjustment. Again, this involves 3 Williamson Act owners. The first one is Stadler et al. There are 16 assessor parcels in Book 29. It's 4,751 acres under contract number 10-019. Next owner is Karen and Jay Jacobson. There are 7 assessor parcels in Book 29. It's 842 acres under contract 1024. Third owner is Karen Jacobson. That's 4 assessor parcels in Book 29. It's under contract 10-023. These are all cattle ranches that are located down in South County, about 60 miles southeast of Hollister. Stadler et al. Will roughly sell 270 acres to Jacobson. They're the owners of the 2 LCA preserves. Stadler et al. Will decrease in acres from 4,751 acres to 4,481 acres. Karen and J. Jacobson's preserve will increase in acreage from 640 to 909 acres. And Karen Jacobson's preserve will increase in acreage from 842.2 to 842.3. Now, the applicant submitted this application for number 1. There's a generator that pumps water in the back half of the Stadler Ranch that's located on the Jacobson's property. So this lot line adjustment will basically put the water back to the Stadler piece. And the new boundaries are going to follow a bordering fence that's going to contour to the land. Again, there are 7 conditions that need to be met for a lot line adjustment, as previously stated in the last application. And all 3 applicants met the 7 conditions for this lot line adjustment. Your Agriculture Preserve Advisory Committee recommended a unanimous approval of this lot line adjustment.
Okay.
Any
Thank
questions?
you. Any questions or comments from the board? Any questions or comments from the public on that item? If not, I'll bring it back to the board for a motion.
Move per staff recommendation.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none. The third item.
The third item, that's a compatible use request. This involves the Isha Institute of Inner Sciences. This is assessor parcel number 121603, 62.77 acres under LCA contract 75-48. This contract is located next to San Juan Bautista on Salinas Road. Contract is currently under non-renewal and scheduled to come out of the Williamson Act December 31st, 2018. Also, the City of San Juan Bautista also plans to annex this parcel in the near future. Applicant requests to construct a 150 by 150 meditation hall. It's 22,500 square feet, which includes restrooms, showers, storage rooms, kitchen, dining, multipurpose meeting rooms, office patios, and parking areas. The building will be open to all ISHA members as well as non-ISHA members. The compatible use will take up approximately 5 acres of land. The applicant has planted 1,000 olive trees plus 95 other fruit trees on 12.35 acres of land, all under drip irrigation system with 8-foot-high deer fence. Total cost of the project for the improvements and trees exceeded $95,000. The well is currently not operational, and water is being transported by truck to holding tanks until the well is repaired. The remainder of the ranch is used for cattle grazing. Now, under a county ordinance 1901-023, that's categories of compatible uses, which I'll go over with you. There's various different types of compatible uses that are allowed. And as an example, number 1, mining and quarrying. Minerals, petroleum products, rock, sand, and gravel is an allowable use. Forestry and production of wood products, dams, fire prevention, flood control works. Outdoor recreation only if the recreation is incidental and not detrimental to the ag use. Signs, property for sale, communications facilities or public utility facilities, home occupations, Any use which was approved by the board that which was existed at the time the land is included in a preserve. Any use required to be permitted by the act. And number 9, and this is the only one that this one could possibly qualify for, any other similar compatible use as determined by this board upon a finding that the proposed use is incidental and not detrimental to agricultural use. Structures, it also talks about structures. No structures shall be constructed or placed on land in an ag preserve except those related directly to agriculture or a compatible use. Now, under a county ordinance and the state ordinance 51-238.1, which talks about compatible uses, conditions have to be met in order for a compatible use to be approved. Number 1, the use will not significantly compromise the long-term productivity, agricultural capacity of the subject ag preserve. Number 2, the use will not significantly displace or impair current or reasonably foreseeable ag operations on the subject ag preserve. And number 3, the use will not result in significant removal of adjacent agricultural preserves from agriculture or open space use. And in evaluating compatibility, the board shall consider the impacts on non-contracted lands near the ag preserve. Now, in this situation, the preserve is coming out of the Williamson Act, as I mentioned, December 31st, 2018, and the applicant has planted olive trees and fruit trees on 12 acres with the remaining 45 acres for grazing. The remaining 5 acres, which is about 8% of the total land under contract, will be used for the proposed compatible use. And as mentioned, this parcel will also be annexed in the city of San Juan Bautista in the future. The Agricultural Preserve Advisory Committee recommended approval for this compatible use with a vote of 3-2. Following the meeting, next day, one of the members came to me and indicated if he had to do it all over again, he would have voted no, and he's here in the audience today, and he's going to also speak about that. At this time, if you have any questions of me.
Is there any questions from the board at this time? I think I do have one question, and as you noted, the project parcel or contracted parcel is coming out of Williamson, and it's in the spirit of the city limits. How does the planning interact? I think what they're trying to do here is have compatibility to submit an application to build a structure on a contracted parcel. How does that go through the process? Since it's in the Williamson Act, and hypothetically, if this board finds that the use is compatible, the applicant puts his application through the county planning. It's in the sphere of influence of the city. Who's the lead agency?
Tough question.
I don't know, Mr. Turner, you might want to add.
Well, this use does require a use permit from the county. Being that it's in the sphere of influence, we haven't had the discussion yet, but we would discuss it with the city of San Juan Bautista about the timing of the annexation that they planned for and who the appropriate lead agency would be. But that it remains to be seen because we don't have an application yet as far as what the use is, and we haven't met with the city about the timing of the annexation. I did consult with our LAFCO director and did determine that there is no prohibition through LAFCO about annexing property that is currently in the Williamson Act, though. So annexation could commence, provided the city has provisions to handle Williamson Act contracts.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions from the board? If not, we could have public testimony, and then we'll bring the discussion back to the board. You have anything further to add, Tom?
Not at this time.
Okay, thank you. You might have to help us answer some questions afterwards, but we'll
Sure.
go ahead and start with the public comment period.
Jim, Adam? Afternoon, I'm Jim Adam, and I'm a resident on Salinas Road, maybe a mile and a half from the proposed complex. I'm also a general engineering contractor since 1986 and have had a site construction contracting business since then as well. I've been doing this asphalt, concrete, and site work since the 70s. That's the basis of my question about this proposed compound that they're proposing. I'm wondering, and I'll read if I can, that would be great. I'm wondering how we can approve a compatible use with no definite plan. Although their representative is also their architect, Isha has been careful to mask what the future plans for the property might entail. No property owner would be allowed to describe a proposed development as the location and the specifics of the building have yet to be determined. They state that they have proposed 22,500 square foot building plans are only preliminary. The property owner has also been quoted that their underlying goal is to build an environment similar to their property in Tennessee. Just to clarify how completely different the property in Tennessee is from the property in San Juan Bautista. Tennessee is 1,200 acres of wooded lands with structures more than 3,500 feet from the nearest road. The furthest corner of the 62-acre parcel in San Juan Bautista is less than 1,500 feet from the road. This also is a dry pasture land, not woodland, and the availability of water would make it impossible to maintain a thickly wooded landscape like Tennessee. The initial plan for construction of this enormous meditation hall is stated to be at the crest of the hill and 500 feet from the Alameda and 1,500 feet from the intersection of the Alameda and Highway 156. They state that the plan to accommodate the structures and the parking within the 5-acre location. I challenge them to fit this enormous building and the required parking on the crown of this hill. They will be required to provide hardscape parking based upon the size of the assembly hall, and at more than 22,000 square feet, that would require a parking lot significantly larger than any other in San Juan Bautista. This includes the large parking lots at Windmill Market and the elementary school, actually larger than those two lots combined. They will be required to provide ADA parking and access to their assembly hall that will inevitably cause significant impact on the hillside landscape. An assembly hall of this magnitude will require a minimum of 7 ADA stalls, and if they do provide any sort of medical care on this site, then that number will double. I only bring this up to show the magnitude of the structure and the outlying hardscape that is required for development of this scale. I would assume that they don't propose to allow the water runoff to flow into storm sewers, so that would mean that the projected 80,000 square feet of parking lot pavement, which doesn't include the roads and the walks necessary to service the meditation hall, would require bioswales, culverts, collectors, and subgrade distribution systems, or some other design which typically adds an additional 20%.
Mr. Adams, if you could please summarize, we have a 3-minute
Okay.
time limit. I apologize for not pointing that out
That's
earlier.
fine. In summation, the proposed site at the top of the hill, I challenge them to describe how they can accommodate the parking and the structure, and especially in a green fashion.
Okay, thank you.
You bet.
Tammy Adams?
While Ms. Adams is coming to the podium, I want to make it real clear that what we're reviewing is the compatibility of a proposed building on the property, and there's no project that has been submitted to the County of San Benito at this time, and so I just want to remind everybody that we haven't seen the details of the project, and this is just the opportunity to resolve the Williamson Act question, whether it's compatible use to the contract or not, so the landowners could put an application into the county for a project to go through a planning process. Ms. Adams?
Hi, my name is Tammy Adam, and I live on Salinas Road in San Juan Bautista. Thank you to the Board of Supervisors to let me speak in regards to the request for 5 acres of compatible use under the Williamson Act. Vanny, actually, I appreciate appreciate you writing me the intentions of Isha for the new center here in San Juan Bautista, and I'm assuming that you are the point guard for this project. At the last meeting, and I'm bringing this up because I want you to have an understanding of where I'm coming from. At the last meeting, I stated that I had been personally misled by everyone I've met from the Isha Foundation, starting from the first day when I went to introduce myself as a neighbor at their planting celebration. There I was told by many different Isha members, including the man that donated the property, that, quote, "We are just going to plant trees and watch them grow," and stated empathetically that they had no plans for any development other than maybe a few small open areas for individual meditation. I have since spoken with many more Isha members whom claim to be managing the project but are new to Isha and really don't know the details yet. This has been very dishonest and quite frustrating to me. Recently, Vanny wrote me an email stating the intentions of Isha for the property. She wrote saying, quote, "We have been aggressively planting to stop all erosion, reinforce and stabilize the hills. I want to know what reports or surveys were done that stated that there was ever an erosion problem that would need such aggressive measures as on that property in the first place. By the way, natural erosion is one of the greenest ways to promote growth." Vanny also said that the underlying goal of the Isha Foundation was to provide a similar environment as in Tennessee, promote harmony among mankind. The Tennessee compound, like my husband said, that Vanny's talking about, is located in a very remote area, literally 13 miles away from the nearest town, McMinnville, as opposed to just minutes away from our town, San Juan Bautista. The Tennessee compound is located on 1,200 acres of naturally forested land versus this property, which is only 62 acres of dry land pasture. The largest structure on the Tennessee property is almost 40,000 square feet. In fact, it's the largest free-spanning meditation hall in the Western Hemisphere, according to the Isha Foundation website, which is frighteningly similar to the proposed building of 22,500 square feet. On the site plan, there was no designation for the proposed 300-car parking lot structure that was mentioned at the last meeting, which would be approximately another 100,000 square feet. I've researched the Williamson Act at great length, and for the life of me, I can't imagine that that environment can be even remotely considered compatible under the Williamson Act. Finally, the 5 acres that Isha is talking about has not been sufficiently defined, surveyed, or studied, and does not fall within the Williamson Act compatibility clause with its surrounding, and therefore I urge the Board of Supervisors to drop this proposal. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good afternoon. I'm Jim Pacheco. I'm a member of the LCA Advisory Committee. Since the meeting of on 11/17/2013, I've had contact with several people regarding the issue application, and as Tom told you, I was one of the votes to approve this. Since that day, and all the information that I've brought to me, plus the fact that I don't know where my thoughts were that particular day when I voted. Either I'm getting old, or I wasn't feeling well, or what the situation was. But I've been involved with the Williamson bill since 1968, and that was a huge mistake. I don't feel that this property meets the test of compatibility, and I certainly hope that the board doesn't make the same mistake that I made. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, I'm one of the board members also on the advisory committee. My name is Sergio Garcia, and I live on 10th Brandy Court. One of the reasons why I came forward is because I feel it's kind of deceiving the long-term productivity of the orchard. The orchard is 9 acres. In order to maintain an orchard like that, it requires 3 acre-feet of water. There's no way that in that valley you're going to get 3 acre 3 acres of water in that canyon. 1 acre foot of water is approximately 626,000 gallons. So if you multiply that times 3, you can tell that it multiplies. I understand they've been trucking water for that orchard, for trucking it, and I think the trucks can only hold like 9,000 gallons of water, and they're putting that through. In order to bring that to full capacity, or for the trees to produce to the maximum, they will need to keep those trees watered fully under the 3 acre feet of water for at least from 4 to 5 years. So the long-term productivity doesn't seem reasonable to maintain that kind of cost. I think that one of our subdivisions in the county, they were trucking a couple of years back, they were trucking water for $300 a truckload. So you can see when you're looking at 1 million gallons of water to maintain that acreage, just 1 acre, not adding the other 8 acres, is a fortune. You're talking about thousands and thousands of dollars to maintain that type of an orchard. I think that I was one of the members that voted against it, not only because of that, but also because of it wasn't compatible with the use. I felt that it wasn't compatible with the use of the ag. I could also talk about the range. Normally, the carrying capacities for that kind of slope is anywhere from 10 to 15 acres for one animal unit. And one animal unit is a 1,000-pound animal that can feed for 1 month in one area. So that facility couldn't even carry 6 animals per year. So I think from the beginning there was a mistake made, and I think if we move forward and let this go forward, we're going to make a bigger mistake. Those are my comments. Thank you.
Thank you.
Richard Pitchka?
Good afternoon. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. First of all, I'd like to just say that I heard that some activity was taking place at the entrance to San Juan Canyon where I live, and I was interested in what they were doing, so I went out to look at the situation and talk to the people, and I have to say from the very beginning that I had a very favorable impression of the people. They seemed like they had a lot of integrity, and there's a lot of intelligence there. A lot of professional people are involved in what they're doing. But before I want to speak to the board, I wanted to make sure that the Isha Foundation actually has been a good neighbor where they do have a track record in the United States. And so I read some things that were written by the mayor of McMinn, Tennessee, to see what he had to say. And he was very, very positive about the effect of Isha on their community. And then I exchanged emails with the vice mayor, and he also had very, very nice things to say. My feeling is that as an organization, they have been very good neighbors within their own communities. The real question is agricultural use right now, whether we're going to allow this small portion of the property to become, to be considered a compatible use. Clearly, what they are doing or attempting to do on the property is a much more intensive form of agriculture than anything that's happened in the last 50 years. And so, it seems like they're really making an effort to do something that's really beautiful on the spot. I think that because they're not necessarily professional farmers, I suspect that there's going to be some adjustments in what they do, but their intentions seem to be quite sincere. And also, just to get back to the matter of fairness, I mean, the law does allow, to consider such things as oil wells and gas wells where fracking is employed to be considered a compatible use. And I think just a sense of justice on our part would let us think that, well, maybe a meditation hall which would have to comply with all of the planning procedures of the county or the city, whoever becomes a lead agency, a meditation hall would be, certainly a less impactful and use than a fracking oil well. So I know it's a judgment call. I think that some members of your advisory board thought it was a good idea. Some people thought it was not a good idea. I trust that you will make a good, fair judgment. I just want to make sure that you know that, on the basis of their own record, that established in the United States, that this is an organization that has been an upstanding member of the communities where they were involved. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I'm Ann Hall with San Benito Engineering, and I'm here speaking for the Isha Foundation. And I think I have talked to most of you probably over the past couple weeks, but I think my main point would be that the limited scope of what you're considering today, just like Commissioner Botello said at the beginning, we're talking about compatibility and whether or not this affects the agricultural productivity of the property at hand. And going back to what Sergio said, if he's saying, it can only support a few cattle on the acreage, by putting trees on it, it's now more compatible than it was when it was under the Williamson Act, because it's only ever been grazing. It's 62 acres. It never met the 160-acre requirement for cattle grazing. So,
sorry, please, everyone's entitled to describe what they interpret, what is to be, their opinion. Thank you, Sergio.
So, okay, not to put Sergio on the spot, but just to say the minimum acreage requirement under Williamson Act is typically 160 acres for cattle grazing. The property is, by adding the orchard, the property has only, in my opinion, become more compatible than it was 10 years ago. And by taking away 5 acres, are they affecting the current agricultural productivity of that property? And that 5 acres are taken away is not in the orchard area. So I don't see that it is. A lot of other discussion has to do with the potential use of those 5 acres and how that use would be laid out. Those are very legitimate questions. Those are all questions that have to come under and be scrutinized through the county use permit process, but they're not part of the questions that you're looking at today. It comes back to agricultural compatibility. And amongst the list of things that have been previously approved as compatible uses are oil wells, mining and quarrying, agricultural processing facilities, wineries, telecommunication cell towers, hunting and hunting facilities, small home businesses, secondary residential units for ranch managers or caretakers, use of grounds for an event center, and weddings and parties. So these are other uses that have been approved as compatible in the past. And I would say that this property does not significantly displace any of the current agricultural use of the property, and that it is in keeping with other compatible uses you have approved before.
Supervisor Munzer has a question for you, Ms. Hall.
And were you able to find out the well that's on the property, what it used to produce?
No, shoot, I forgot to ask that. I have a well test from 2009 when the property was purchased. That was a functioning well at that time, and I believe it had to have met the minimum of 3 gallons per minute. I can find that. I can get that information. And
okay. And do you know where it received its power from? Was it when?
No,
You don't.
I don't know.
Okay, thank you.
But I do know that was part of the purchase information. They had to get the quantity and quality tested, and I've seen those reports.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay, thank you.
Sherry Cal?
Hello, my name is Sherry Cal Linsegum. Thank you for hearing me out. I live up the San Juan Canyon Road. So this particular property doesn't have a direct impact on us, but then by just driving by every day and then have involved and went to the property site and then find out that they're really a good neighbor. And having a meditation center, we have a St. Francis retreat and we have Pioneer Park up the Canyon Road. These are all places that people with a different religion, they can come and meditate and relax. And I think it's a very good thing that happened in San Juan Bautista. It brings the San Juan Bautista area into more international places. And then just by doing a little research, and there's some compatibility use for hunting lodge, and I think meditation center is as good as any one of those. I just want to raise my support of this this proposal. And of course, they have to first get the supervisor approval before you can get their planning, all the detail. Right now, they really don't have any detail. So just want to say that I hope you'll find that it's compatible use. Thank you.
Thank you.
Michael Linthicum.
Good afternoon. Thank you for taking the time to hear this case. I live in San Juan Canyon also, and from the very beginning we went down just to see what was going on like everybody else did. And I have to tell you, starting from the get-go, I've seen absolutely nothing but truth and honesty out of these people. I've never had any misrepresentations of the facts or the intents. In fact, I would consider what they're trying to do down there as being visionary in nature. I think it's compatible with the Williamson Act in that they're actually making significant improvements to the agricultural aspects of that particular piece of terrain. They've got orchards, they're talking about having gardens, they're talking about having green space, kind of like a wildlife refuge area. And I just hope you all consider, for the future of this area, we need to be looking at these smarter ways of doing business. Sustainable permaculture activities are really the way to go, and that's what these people are looking at. They're actually looking at improving our neighborhood, improving our county, and improving the city of San Juan Bautista. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Martirana.
Good afternoon. My name is Chris Martirana. I live at 97 4th Street in San Juan Bautista. And I don't have, I'll make my comments brief. I think that in terms of the use being incidental and not detrimental to the agricultural use of the land, clearly it's not detrimental, I don't think. But in terms of being incidental, the property's now owned by a volunteer organization, the foundation that's based on basically a volunteer organization, and the process, the activities that they perform and conduct as part of their organization's operation need that compatible use or call for that compatible use of the property, and in that sense, it's incidental to the operation of the ag business. So they are going to bring in a bunch of people. Everyone I've met has been professionals, all with better jobs than I have, and the caliber of volunteers that are coming in and what we think we are going to gain as a community is terrific. And again, because that's what's going to draw those people down to then conduct the agricultural operation. And in that sense, it's an incidental use and a compatible use. So that's all I had to say. Thank you.
Thank you.
Nikki Johnson.
Good afternoon. I'm Nikki Johnson. Thank you for your time today. I would like to speak for just a moment about the Isha Foundation and the Isha group. As you may or may not know, there have been some rumors that we're a religious group, and I would just like to address that because I'm a minister. I graduated from Fuller Theological Seminary, so one of the largest Protestant seminaries in the world, and I'm also a meditator. And many of our membership, they belong to all different traditions around the world, and they also are meditators. But they're not gathering around a tradition or a religion. They're gathering around the idea of meditating. So I wanted to be clear about that. I also would like to let you know that we include professionals from all different areas, many of them who are here today. We have members who are participants in leadership at Amazon, Google, Charles Schwab, PG&E. We have architects, doctors, designers. We have a very high level of professional participation with our Isha community who would bring many resources and great expertise to the San Juan Bautista area. And because we volunteer our time to help the Isha Foundation, we're used to working extra hours to do this. So you have people who have a background in resources that could be useful, and they're also used to giving their time, which is of great value to the community that they hope to participate in and be a part of. As you know, the parcel of land that we're hoping to develop under the Williamson Act, when we acquired it in 2011, it was under that act, and it was producing a minimal amount of agricultural benefit, simply, as we've heard today spoken to, the cattle grazing. Since we acquired the land, we've improved it with the 12-plus acres of orchard, and then we've maintained the cattle grazing, and we also have the plans for adding 25 acres of native vegetation to protect the integrity of the land from erosion, as well as to support hiking trails and outdoor open space. And as it's also been mentioned, our meditation center would be open to the public. So these areas, these trails would be open for other people to use and to enjoy being out in the beauty of San Juan Bautista, while also having the opportunity to participate in the meditation center if they were inclined. We believe, and which has also been mentioned today, that we are not impacting or displacing the agricultural use that's current on the property that we've developed and that we also acquired on the property. And therefore, there is the stipulation in the regulations that if you're not displacing or negatively impacting it, that your actual space and plan that you're intending to propose doesn't have to be for agricultural support. So I believe that we actually don't have to be agriculturally inclined in the building. I know you're saying that a meditation center isn't an agricultural production support, but I think that it actually says in these requirements that that's not required. Is that a warning or the end? It's like red light, green light, yellow light. There are no lights.
There's
Okay.
no warnings, but you could summarize.
May I summarize? Thank you. So I think today's question it really becomes, if we are not displacing the agricultural operation on the property and therefore not required to provide a plan for an agricultural support project, then under what condition are we not meeting the requirements of the compatible use permit? Thank you for your time. I also would like to thank all of the community members who have supported us, and I have emails, letters, and various correspondence in support, and I would like to offer that to you if you are interested.
Okay, you could pass it to the clerk. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
J.K. Shafu.
Good afternoon, sir. I'm Jay Krishnan Chatu. I work as a software engineer with Amazon, and I volunteer with the Isha Foundation. And I'm a permaculture expert, so I've been taking charge of the permaculture planting in the property. Just want to explain a few things about it. So what we are trying to do here is a regenerative permaculture farming, not putting chemicals and pesticides. Since we are close to the Blue Lane Creek, this is the best that we can do as an orchard. And also about the woodlands. So there are comments saying that this property is not similar to Tennessee. We don't have a thick wood. Just across our land, on the state park, you can see complete land is covered with trees. This is not the same trees as in Tennessee. We have buckeye, we have oak trees, and we have sycamores. So what we are trying to bring to this site is 25 acres of native forest, comprising of these trees. We are not doing it just on our own ideas. We are taking help from all the experts locally. And we also had, after the actually we have presented a couple of times to the local community about what we are trying to do. After that, we had people come in from USDA and come and check our property and see what we are trying to do. And they have agreed to help us, provided if we give open access to them, that they can come anytime and monitor our property. Yes, we gave them open access, and we'll be working with them. About water and the requirement for water. Olive is a dryland crop. That's the reason we wanted to plant olive here. So our weekly requirement is 5,000 gallons, which is comfortably met with hauling water from outside. Doesn't mean that we don't have water. We have a well that was dug in 2010, which can at a minimum supply 3 gallons of water a minute. That means per day we can get at least 1,000 gallons, well over whatever our current requirement is. And I have the report here I wanted to submit to you. The well is not operational. We need to do two things there. The well is damaged and it has to be, the water has to be treated. We worked at the cost, it's not that high. But having a 3-gallon well or going for a bigger well. We had experts visit twice and we found water in 2 places, and we have quotes from the expert to drill the well also, which we'll be doing. And also, so we are not just using up the water. We are doing, as we're saying, we are doing permaculture farming. We are not using up all the resources on the land. We have created swales. People are talking about swales. Yes, we have already created swales. We are going to harvest as much rainwater as possible on this land, store it back to the land, whether we use it or not. Basically, we are not taking away anything from the land. Before us doing this, the entire 62 acres was a barren land, and there was a comment saying that it can only support 6 animals. No. It can support 40 animals. Last 3 years, 40 cattle has been grazing on our property comfortably without getting any extra hay from even during the driest season. Because we have mountains on both sides, north and south. Some doesn't get that much sunlight, so still we have grass left on the mountain for the cows to graze. Anybody can see that. And the new proposed project is going to be away from the orchard. It's one contiguous piece away from the orchard, not close to the orchard. So first of all, we are not taking away any, to summarize, we are not taking away anything from the orchard, and the visitors that are going, this new proposed use, visitors who are going to come to the property will not be going to the orchard or spoiling the existing agricultural operation. Thank you, sir.
Okay, thank you. I do have one question for you. Because this has been something that's been on my mind for a couple of days. When you acquired the property, right? Or you represented Isha Group in acquisition of the property, and you probably did that about a year or two ago. When did you acquire the parcel?
I'm not sure the exact date, on 2010.
Okay. And it was in non-renewal, probably placed in non-renewal by the Nyland family.
Exactly.
And yeah, I imagine you had a vision to have a yoga center, a meditation center,
right,
which is nothing. That's great. Is there any? Did you look into the Williamson Act as far as being a yoga center and a meditation center being compatible? Making building a building and having the compatibility, did you look into that prior to purchasing the property?
As far as my knowledge, I don't think we delved into the details. We knew that property is going to come out of the Williamson Act, and when we are given a responsibility, we came and visited the city. We talked to Roger, we talked to Tom Slavich, and asked them what are the possible ways where we can build a center. They clearly told us if you can cancel out of the property so that you can continue to, then you come out of the Williamson Act, so you can do whatever you wish to do based on county and city approvals. Then we came to know about the class where if you have this much amount of orchard, then you can have a compatible use. I know that compatible use doesn't mean that agriculture use that is compatible, but that is not detrimental to your existing agriculture operation. So we thought, okay, we talked to Tom Slavich and thought, okay, this is the way you can go ahead and build it, because that's exactly our vision was, to make this property as green as possible. And when it aligned perfectly to our vision, that we thought, okay, we'll go ahead with this.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Christopher Jones.
Hi, good afternoon. My name is Christopher Jones, and this is my wife, Elena. We live on Lang Street, relatively new to the area, but we're very happy to be here. I just wanted to talk to a couple points. When by profession, I'm a psychotherapist, a pastoral psychotherapist, and I too went to divinity school. Where is she? Anyway, I too went to divinity school, but back on the East Coast, and trained in Christian ministry. So some of the points that were raised earlier on in terms of integrity and honesty are, they're important to me. And it's important for me that Lena and I and anyone else involved in the project be good neighbors and honest and open. In fact, any of you who had some concerns, I honestly haven't met you guys before, but honestly, come over for a coffee. We live on Lang, so 12 Lang. And that's just how we want to approach things. My dad's a Vietnam vet, and he raised me to be all about integrity and all about honesty. So I just wanted to address that point. Also, you know, I can just speak to what I've seen as well in Tennessee. I was living there at the time. I was in grad school at the time, and when I hear, you know, that to be like that in some way, I can say that there's no way on this amount of land that it would be anything like that in terms of, you know, size or. But what I can say is that I was there even at the groundbreaking in Tennessee, and what I've seen over the years there is we're all about wanting to be good neighbors. And, you know, it's a beautiful property, but it's also inconspicuous. You don't see things from the road. What you see is green cover. It's extremely, extremely integrous also in how it is with the neighborhood. Yeah, it's just beautiful. And here, obviously, it's going to be smaller. And here, obviously, you know, this is looking at compatibility. When it comes to submitting things so that you guys can approve them or not approve, whatever you want, it's going to be going through a process where the community is also going to have a voice in terms of what's it going to look like, you know, what's it going to be like, and we're, you know, we want to engage community in that so that we can really bring benefit. You know, we put a lot of work into it. We wouldn't bother if it weren't a positive thing, if it weren't something that's going to bring benefit. I can also say in terms of compatibility, a building would be extremely compatible, at least in my you know, limited perspective. I don't know the details that you do. In terms of people are going to want to come to volunteer to maintain and plant trees to make it beautiful. But in the middle of the day, we need a place to use the restroom or sit down and meditate or do the bendy moves, you know, the yoga stuff. I mean, that's what... We need a place to do that. And so if people are coming in from San Francisco or San Jose for the weekend, it's compatible. Thanks for your time.
Thank you. Thank you.
Kurt Kurosaki.
Hi, good afternoon. I'm Kurt Kurosaki. I run Mission Farm RV Park just down the street from the property. But I also reside right next to the Isha Foundation property, right at the crest of the hill. And so if anyone is going to experience more impact, it's probably me. I've spoken and gotten to know the members quite well in the past few months, and they've been quite forthcoming with their plans. And, you know, regardless on how you decide on this current issue, they're going to move forward with it in 4 or 5 years. So, and we're talking about a 5-acre parcel in question here. That's less than 10% that's going to be of the total property that's going to be impacted by your decision. So with that in mind, you know, we have to look towards other factors, like what's going to happen if you decide to not allow them this 5-acre to move forward with this 5-acre project. They've been, you know, sourcing work in the local community. They've been, you know, bringing a lot of business to town. You know, and I can only imagine that if they decide to move forward with this now, it's going to just have nothing but a positive impact on this community. So I urge the board to take that into consideration and vote to support the Isha Foundation. Thanks.
Okay. Thank you.
James Dassel.
Good afternoon. My name is James Dassel, and I live at 1101 Salinas Grade Road. As a neighboring property owner, I share 1,320 feet of property boundary with the Isha Foundation. Since acquiring the property, I've witnessed many changes next door. The clean open space is a picturesque California rangeland that drew me to my own slice of San Juan Bautista has morphed into quite the eyesore under the guise of agriculture. Indiscriminate use of deer fencing, scarred hillsides, and blocked watersheds are a few examples of Isha agriculture. Little thought seems to have been given to the long-term environmental consequences of their actions. What they seem most concerned is with getting the trees in at all costs so they can hurry up and complete their compatible use act under the Williamson Act. I think it's only fair to define the Williamson Act. It's the discouragement of premature and unnecessary conversion of ag land to urban uses, as ag lands have important open space benefits and should be kept in production. The original Williamson Act contract on this particular piece of property was drawn up for livestock grazing. Not all is, and certainly not a 22,500 square foot building with inclusive parking for 350 vehicles. That said, under the county code, the board shall consider the impact on non-contracted lands and other contracted preserves nearby. The attempted olive planting alone has created significant impact on viewshed, blight, hillside degradation, wildlife displacement, and soil deposition in waterways. Now add a structure with a footprint larger than the Briggs building with parking for 300 vehicles on a ridgeline overlooking San Juan Valley, clearly visible from town, Highway 156, Salinas Grade Road, and the historic Deanza Trail. This doesn't mention the traffic impact, noise, runoff, sewage, water supply, additional police and fire resources, and all the other significant items that need to be considered. As a neighbor, I have serious concerns in my rights being impacted and the enjoyment of my own property being compromised. One must also question the long-term viability of an olive planting with no reliable source of water. Since the initial planting, all water has been hauled in by truck. As a county well-versed in agriculture, we know one cannot realistically pay to have water hauled in as a prime source of water. A load of water costs them approximately $300. Convert this to acre feet, and you'll come up with a $26,000 bill. For comparison purposes, blue valve water costs local farmers anywhere between $190 and $200 an acre foot. Isha is paying for water 130 times higher than comparable operations. This clearly is not sustainable nor in line with the spirit of production agriculture. Conversations with local well drillers will also confirm the likelihood of finding the quality and quantity of water needed to sustain such a planting on the property is nil. My own experiences with my own well will tell you domestic usage alone is best, and the yellow shade of green on my lawn will confirm it. These are just a few examples of strong indicator that little homework was done prior to acquiring this property, and the project is utilizing merely a loophole to meet the compatible finding. A risky loophole for Samuel County as it could set a precedence for future development on contracted lands and possible litigation from past projects that followed the rules and the process of withdrawal by waiting for the non-renewal or waiting for cancellation by paying 12.5% of assessed value. I know I'm over, but this is important. The sale price.
If you could summarize, Mr. Dazzle, please.
The sale price of this property was approximately $800,000. At 12.5%, you're looking at around $100,000 that this will cost the taxpayer if you get the compatible finding. Just another significant impact. And as a concerned neighbor, son of San Juan Batista, and a taxpayer, I urge the board to take these thoughts into consideration. A structure larger than the Briggs building will have a significant impact on future ag operations and San Juan Batista. The trees are hanging on by a thread. The source of water 130 times higher.
You'll have to close the comments.
Thank you.
Supervisor Munzer has a question for you before you leave the podium, though.
James, your well, do you know how much gallons per minute you're getting?
At about 5 gallons per minute max, if I'm lucky, and it'll take almost over 30 to 40 hour period to fill 4,000 gallons.
Okay.
So it's marginal at best. The other problem is with this particular place is their well, if it can be considered an active well, is in less than 10 to 15 feet of my property line. I believe wells in San Benito County need to be no less than 50 feet from a property line, and that draws a concern for me on what it could do to my water table should they try to refresh that well and start irrigating out of it. The statement was also made that no feed is being brought in for the cattle, which I see every morning. The fellow that's got the lease on the cattle hauls feed to his cattle, so that's been misstated. As a neighbor, direct neighbor, I feel I might have a little better idea of what's actually going on than they do because they spend more time there. Also, the wooded slopes that they addressed are the north slopes of San Benito County. That leads to more water, which they don't technically have. So, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Tony Fox.
Hi, I'm Tony Bach. I'm the mayor of San Juan Bautista, and I live in San Juan Bautista. And first thing I want to state right now is I have absolutely no opinion on this project and whether it's good, bad, or indifferent. The thing that struck me was in the introduction, it was mentioned the annexation of this property to the city of San Juan Bautista. There has been no application for annexation. I don't know if that has any effect on your decisions, but that's one bad piece of information. Nobody's come to us. And I think the people should know that if it got annexed to the city of San Juan, there's a process that is, I mean, I don't think I'd even want to try it. You have to get approval from the city council. You have to go to LAFCO. You have to satisfy, all the services. It's a long, involved process. I don't know if the people know what they're looking at, but I just wanted to make that point. There has been no application for annexation to the city of San Juan Bautista. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Lori Farmer.
Mr. Chair,
Supervisor David Cruz?
thank you. Before the next person comes up, the next guest, Byron, is it warranted that you submit an application to be considered for compatible use, annexation to the city of San Juan?
Well, we don't know if it's going to be annexed or not.
Okay,
we
that's
don't
my,
have-
that was,
But any item before the planning committee, any item that comes before us will be considered incomplete until the Williamson Act issue is resolved.
and we all know that it's a whole different process that we go through. This is just a discussion of a compatibility. It's not what's the foreseeable in the future of what other stuff you got to submit, right?
That's correct.
Right,
That's a
and-
determination we need to make.
Right, and I have a question as well, Mr. Chair, because I don't want this to get lost, because I'm not a water expert, and I didn't know I was supposed to come here with all these water knowledge. 'Cause I know some questions were been asked by our board members. Now, water, I mean, we're not dealing with water today. We're dealing with whether this is a compatible agricultural use, correct?
That's my understanding, yes.
We could talk about water later down the line once it gets to that, correct?
It will be analyzed.
It'll
with
be
the easement
analyzed. It's not
application.
being analyzed today.
I don't believe so. It's more of a assessor question, but yeah.
All right, thank you. I just want to make that clear because I don't want to get lost in translation here, because it's my responsibility to look at this information and determine whether there's a compatible use on what's being proposed, information, not on whether there's going to be water on that property or not. It's not before us. So.
Well,
Thank you,
yes,
Mr. Chair.
and I understand that sentiment, Supervisor Rivas, but possibly if you're invest, say, $90,000 in an orchard, before you plant that orchard, at least I know what I do. I make sure I have water, and then you have to ask yourself, why would you plant an orchard knowing that you don't have water? And it just, what is your future plans for water if you're within the Williamson Act, or did you plant that orchard to be compatible to and circumvent a set of rules? That's what I think has to be asked through our minds as far as processing this compatibility issue.
Right. Well, right. And I mentioned that because we don't have facts before us today, so we don't know that. And I'm not going to make a decision based on what ifs.
Mhm.
That's the point I'm trying to make. So
fair enough.
Mr. Chair, and I have to respond to that comment. I understand what you're saying, Mr. Chair, but at the same time, not to be mean, not to rally members of the audience, but we're here before on a compatible issue, period.
That's
Not
right.
if they built, I know they're not going to do it, 20 plants of marijuana plants or olive trees or, that's not what we're here to discuss. We're here to discuss compatibility, period. What they've done in the past, and there's been arguments, there's been discussions on both sides that, misinformation was out there and blah, blah, the other side, this and that. That's not the issue here. That's the issue here is just on compatibility.
That's right, and that is right, and that's what I made clear at the beginning, is that we don't have an application, we don't have all the facts for a project that would be moved forward, except for the fact that we do know it's a yoga meditation center of a size of about 22,500 feet. Supervisor Munzer?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think we do need to make this or deal with the issue. Historically, this has been grazing land, and it was grandfathered in. It does not meet the criteria of 160 acres for grazing land, but it was grandfathered in because it was granted into the Williamson Act before that requirement was put in place. They're now trying to set up 10 acres of orchard, which does meet our requirement for Williamson Act, but the issue becomes whether that 10-acre is sustainable without water. As the chair pointed out, it's not sustainable if you truck water in. And if they don't have water on the property to sustain that 10-acre of orchard, then that becomes an issue of whether the whole piece of property needs to stay under the Williamson Act or not, irregardless of any future uses. So that's why I'm asking the questions about the water. Because if that orchard is not sustainable with the water that's on the property, I think we have issues with going forward with this.
Well,
and it needs to move out of the Williamson Act.
Well, Mr. Chair, if that's the case, then we got to open up the entire county and discuss every single parcel based on those comments then.
Most of the Williamson Act in the county is under dry farming and grazing, and the ones that are under orchard, they're either surviving or they're going out. So,
yeah, what I'm going to suggest to my colleagues on the board, if we could finish the public testimony, make sure everybody who wants to speak has the opportunity to do so, and then we'll bring the discussion back to us. Can I have next speaker, please?
Good afternoon. My name is Lori Farmer, and I live on Mission Vineyard Road in San Juan Bautista. If this 22,500 square foot structure is built on the ridgeline above my neighborhood, then my privacy and the privacy of all of my neighbors will be greatly impacted. The city currently has only one well. The roads are in poor condition, and the infrastructure cannot support a project of this size. This proposed building site would violate San Benito County's general plan on hillside development. I'm vehemently opposed to this massive building being constructed on the hills above my neighborhood. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other speakers? Would anyone else would like to address the board before I close the public comment period? And since you're the project engineer, I'll allow you to come forward and ordinarily I don't allow people to have two shots at us.
No, and I don't want to take two shots. I just wanted to answer Jerry's question that you had asked before, because it was 3 gallons a minute when the test was done in 2010. So that's
okay, thank you.
Mr. Chair, I know the protocol, but you did allow Ann to come up twice, and I know that Sergio wanted to rebut some of those questions. Can I give my privileged time to Sergio Garcia?
Sure.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
I think they misinterpret the information that I presented. I think that when I said that it's not viable, that operation is not viable, it's because we already mentioned it requires so much water that the orchard will not survive. We have plenty of orchards throughout the county that have been abandoned. Yes, they could accomplish and grow the tree, but they will never get a crop because it requires water and it requires nutrition to the trees to get a product out. And I think that the information that the technician was misinformed. I don't know if he visited any of our offices with the University of California to get the information that he's requesting. But when you talk about range cattle When you talk about feedlots, two different things. A feedlot is when you bring feed in and you feed them in 1 acre, 2 acres. But when you talk about absolutely feeding the animals with the grass that's out in the range, it takes in this county, with the 36 years of experience, it takes anywhere from 10 acres to 27 acres per animal unit. If you don't want to subsidize or supplement the cattle. So it takes a large number of acres. In 65 acres, you cannot take 6 animals and feed them full time for 1 year.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you. I'm not allow anyone else to talk twice anymore. That was it. I will allow you to speak. You haven't had your turn yet. Please come forward. And then after that, this speaker, I'm going to close the public comment period, and the board's going to discuss it and make a decision.
Hi, my name is Vani, and I'm a architect and a designer, and I work on the farm almost daily. We are developing it on permaculture, as JK had mentioned. I just wanted to point out one thing on water. As of now, the existing well, we are looking into repairing it. That's what we've been doing since the time we came in. And also, we've been taking quotes for a new well. So it is not that we do not have the intention. We understand for agriculture you need water. But the time when we came in, since that well was not functional, we had to haul water. And we get 2 truckloads in 1.5 weeks, and I pay $200 for each truckload. And since the onset of winter, now we do not need to water olives as much, and that will be the case during entire winter. And this gives us the opportunity to look into the digging of the new well, which we have already established 2 locations. And also, olives are native to this area, so we do not have to worry about, once they take root, they're growing all over San Juan Bautista as a bush, as a wild. So we would not have to worry about water that much. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. I'm going to close the public comment period and bring it back to the board for discussion. And I think I'll go first, since this project is in my district and that I represent. I have concerns about finding this a compatible use. I don't think it is a compatible use with the Williamson Act contract. My background is in agriculture, educational-wise and professional. I don't know how familiar some of the folks in the gallery are familiar with the state of the Williamson Act, but the state of California has terminated subvention funding to the counties to maintain these contracts, and it's put a tremendous hardship on our county. The Williamson Act is one of those items that this board has worked very hard to lobby the state to resume that funding. So we certainly have a strong opinion about the contracts itself. And what's important to me is the integrity when a family farmer or rancher enters into a contract, knowing the terms and mechanisms to come out of the contract and how long of a period of time it takes. And this is how some of the families stay in the business of productive agriculture. What I have in front of us here, and this is not to be construed at this time that I'm for the ISHA project or I'm against the ISHA project. We don't have an application. We don't have enough information. And as other supervisors noted, when that comes forward, that's when we start looking at water, roads, hydrology of the area that deals with drainage and erosion, public safety, sewer and water. And I think from my perspective and what I think I've perceived here is that ISHA, in order to submit an application a little bit ahead of coming out of the contract, planted an orchard that meets the minimum requirement to be able to submit an application. A 22,500 square foot building is a very, very large complex for our county. I don't think there's anything comparable that we have. That size of a building is the size of the courthouse across the street, the footprint. It's that large, and that's not including the, the support structure that you need. And so what way I see this parcel, it is more of a ISHA Foundation use that is not incidental to the agricultural operation, but the agricultural operation is more incidental to the foundation. And I view it, and I've met with the ISHA folks last week, and I also had conversations with Ms. Hall, their engineer, that sharing my opinion that this is not a compatible agricultural use. I don't know if we could go anywhere in the state, and maybe you can enlighten me, Tom, if I'm misspeaking, of a meditation or yoga or any sort of gathering of peoples within a contract parcel.
The most recent one, I believe, was the Las Aguilas San Benito cattle when they came before you for compatible use for the hunting lodge on Lone Tree Road. I think there were 8 hunting lodges in the main center. I don't recall the square footage.
Yeah, and in my mind, a hunting lodge is on a parcel that's thousands of acres or has access to, quite a bit of habitat. We're talking about 60 acres in a sphere of influence of the city of San Juan, and a request that is going to see, hundreds of visitors during the event, whereas a hunting lodge has 5 or 6 hunters maybe at a time. And so it's completely a different set of circumstances. So I view this as a different use that doesn't have anything to do with agriculture, and there's 2 options. One is cancellation of the contract, which I understand is another process, or 2, wait the 4 years and allow the contract to expire, which is going to expire anyway, and then submit the application then. There's some real constraints to this, as the ISHA folks and their engineer move this project forward. It's going to be, there's a lot of issues on this piece of property to accommodate the type of facility that I think that they have as their vision. And, I certainly hope that the county and the city work together to, resolve some of the issues that they are encounter, and move this as fairly and as efficiently as possible. But what's before us today, to find a compatible use, I cannot see it. So that's my position, and that's where I'm at right now.
Mr. Chair?
Supervisor Rivas.
Yeah, so as I stated previously, the issue before us, is this a compatible use? Does this meditation center or yoga center qualify as a compatible use? And in my opinion, there's no correct answer. I think that it is open for interpretation. I mean, that's what it comes down to. But when I look at this compatible use application, I do believe that the proposed use is incidental and it's not detrimental to agricultural use. And I say that because when I look at the previously approved, the compatible uses like oil and gas wells, mining and quarrying of rock, sand, and gravel, you know, the use of existing buildings and grounds for event centers, for weddings and parties, all of that is open to interpretation. And by golly, we're in San Benito County. Things happen in this county that you would not believe happen in this county. And so for that reason, I believe that this does qualify as a compatible use. You know, maybe my decision, you know, if the Williamson Act was operating like it used to in the past and it wasn't going to expire in 2018, I may have a different view. But you know, the fact that it is going to expire in 2018, I do believe that this does qualify as incompatible use. And you know, I have a cousin that's, you know, that's graduating from Samuel High School, and he's going to go off to college and major in government. And so he calls me and he wants to look at some of our items so he can learn, right? So I gave him this item. I said, why don't you look at this item? And then I called him up and said, well, what do you think about it? He's like, man, I didn't know that the Lorax is in San Benito County because, you know, all the trees that have gone up. And I think that's a positive thing. I think that this is an effort, whether, you know, we have the water to actually sustain this operation. I don't know. I'm not an expert. But I hope that the organization would study it, would find out whether it's a feasible operation or not, because if it is feasible, this is a big thing, and it's a good thing for San Benito County. So thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Anyone? Supervisor Barrios?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I want to make some points here. I think the ISHA organization is a great organization. I think they're doing great things. They have great ideas. No doubt they are good neighbors. Is the building Williamson Act compatible? I don't believe so. Here they have added compatible enhancements like the olive trees, like the fruit trees, and which are absolutely wonderful for the county, but the trees are not in question. They're not the ones that are coming before us right now. What's coming before us is a 22,500 square foot building. That is what we're looking at. And I don't believe that for the building alone, it is a compatible use under the Williamson Act, under the state and the local regulations that we have that specifically pertain to the Williamson Act. I will not support it because I don't believe that it is compatible. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Supervisor Munzer?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Tom, if we were to deny this compatibility and the applicant wanted to purchase their way out of the Williamson Act, how soon would the LCA committee meet again?
Well, the next application period would be the month of March, and the LCA committee would meet in May, then would come before you in June. But this would be something similar to what we went through with Solargen. That was a cancellation. And, you know, besides the 12.5% of the cancellation fee, that's the fair market value of the property. They can annex the whole, not annex, but they could go ahead and cancel the whole property or portion thereof, because now they have the olives, and one of the requirements is on a partial cancellation, the remaining portion would still qualify under the Williamson Act rules. So they could do a full cancellation, a partial cancellation, but there's certain findings that have to be met, and you know, the Department of Conservation gets involved. And then CEQA, you know, I think Building and Planning would have to determine what type of environmental report, how extensive, you know, would it be something like Solargens or less extensive than that? So, you know, it's just not paying the cancellation fee. There's a few more steps involved in that.
So the timeline is 6 months or a year?
It depends. You know, if a full-blown EIR is required, that usually would have to be done before an application would be submitted. So it just depends. Building and Planning would have to make that determination.
Building and Planning would make the determination that a full-blown EIR would be needed, or the state would get involved?
Well, yeah. Well, whatever would be required, Building and Planning would make that determination per CEQA. And then once an application gets submitted, then we would contact Department of Conservation, and they would probably have some comments as well. And then we would go through the same kind of process we did with Solargen.
Well, how long did it take them to?
Well, that one was a little different because you had attorneys involved, and, you know, when you have attorneys involved, it takes a little longer, and you had some lawsuits, and that was a big ordeal. That was 4,500 acres,
Yeah, yeah.
12 Williamson Act contracts. That's a huge thing, probably the biggest in the state. This is, a lot less than that particular project.
Supervisor Barrios?
Yeah, I have another question, but this is for Byron. When they come off the Williamson Act 5 years from now, because really it is a total of 5 years that they would have to wait, they would no longer be under the regulations of the Williamson Act. Compatibility would no longer be an issue. So then they would just have to go through the application process like any other commercial business, whatever.
Yes.
And then we would just be looking at our own ordinances for the building site, the water, the transportation, and that sort of thing. But that will be 5 years from now, so.
Yeah.
If they choose to do this.
If they wait, if they do not cancel the contract, then yes, it'd be 5 years before we could before the county could take an action
And go
on
through
an
that
application.
process.
Yeah.
Okay, very good. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. You have any more comments, Supervisor Menzer? No?
Actually, on that last comment, it's 4 years, because it's 5 years to get out of the Williamson Act, but on the fourth year, or the last year before they're out, they could actually start the use permit process.
Oh, they can, okay.
Yes, that's in our ordinance.
All right, so then it would take whatever time it takes.
4
to go
years, the
through.
fifth year, they would be out.
Okay, but they can start at the end of the fourth year, they can start application process and submitting their plans and doing.
Yes, it's in our ordinance, you can do that.
Okay, thank you.
What was the date that the contract expires?
December 31st, 2018.
December.
31st.
One other comment I'd like to make, if you don't mind, there was a talk about annexation. And, Roger Grimsley, city manager, came to visit me, and he's the one that mentioned the annexation portion, either all or portion thereof, and that they would eventually in the future like to annex that piece in their general plan. So that's where that information came from.
I'm sorry, Supervisor.
Yeah,
Barrios,
thank
please.
you. I'm just thinking of Supervisor Munzer's comments to me about the water issue. Maybe, Byron, you can answer my question in conjunction with Tom. To be a compatible use in this case of the nature, because let's just talk about this project. And what allows it to submit an application is the olive trees, right? That's my understanding. Let's assume the olive trees are not there. Can they still come before the board and ask for a compatible use permit?
That's a solicitor question.
That's really a question for me.
Okay, for you.
They could come, but there's less chance because, that piece was put into the Williamson Act in 1975. There was no ordinance or any rules, so everybody was pretty much just flocked in to get into the Williamson Act. We have 75% of our lands in the Williamson Act, and at that time, there was no rules. Right now, the minimum is 160 acres, so being that it would not even qualify being in the Williamson Act, that was grandfathered in. Usually when somebody wants to do something, they have to at least qualify for being in the Act. So if you wanted to put some cell tower site, any other compatible use, mining and quarrying, I think one of the requirements is it has to qualify, being in the Act. It's grandfathered in, but it doesn't meet today's minimum. So when you want to do something, you would have to meet really the minimums.
Okay, and then I got another question, then my thoughts on this, and then, I'll conclude my position. There was a comment from one of the guests that if we're going to deny it, to find the reason where we're going to deny it, and I wrote that down. And if we deny it or we approve it, that's the board's authority to do that, right? With any support to back up that position.